This is the second in a series of three short videos where I address three specific arguments that usually are the reasons why some people have at some point abandoned their the Adventist, just moved down from Adventist theology and decided they don't believe in it anymore. It's usually one or more of these three arguments that brought them to that place. And I want to use this opportunity to show that these arguments don't work. So there's one video for each of the three arguments, and the three arguments have to do with Daniel chapter 8. And, Adventists say that the little horn in Daniel chapter 8 represents Rome, while everybody says, no, it's Greece. Hebrews 9, Jesus went into the most holy place as opposed to the holy place. And then the idea that investigative judgment causes people to lose their assurance of salvation. So these are the three arguments. This video focuses on the second one, Hebrews 9. And these are things I've talked about before, but I want to have these sort of reference videos that I could quickly send to someone if they have a question on this topic specifically. Okay, so here's the passage in Hebrews 9. It says, "But when Christ came as a high priest of the good things that are now already here, he went through the greater and more perfect tabernacle that is not made with human hands. That is to say, it's not a part of this creation. He did not enter by means of the blood of goats and calves, but he entered the most holy place once for all by his own blood, thus obtaining eternal redemption." So the argument goes something like this. Adventists, because they didn't speak Greek when they first started to process the whole Adventist approach to theology, they didn't know Greek, so they went with the King James Version, and the King James Version says that he went into the holy place. But if you actually look at the Greek, it says the most holy place. And then there's been a lot of debate on this because some Adventist exegetes say, no, it's not, it doesn't say either a holy place or most holy place. It just says holy places. And people have been going back and forth on this for many years. And a lot of times people look at it and say, no, I don't think it's clear enough that the Adventist position is correct. So they start to think that maybe there's something wrong with the Adventist reasoning here. So what is the answer to this? The answer is that Adventist theology is actually not tied to whether Jesus went into the holy place or the most holy place. Adventist theology is tied to the festival calendar of the old sanctuary system. So basically, if we look at the architecture on the left here, I have a picture of the temple arrangement where you had the outer court, you had the altar, then you had the holy place and the most holy place, and the priest went into the holy place for the year, and then on the Day of Atonement he went into the most holy place. Now this arrangement helps us to kind of understand what exactly the priest is doing, what exactly is happening, but our theology is actually not tied to the architecture, but it's tied to the ritual, the ritual calendar, and the year. This whole cycle was repeated every single year, where the priests followed these rituals every day until they got to the Day of Atonement, and then they went through this cleansing process and started over. They had the Passover in the spring, and then at the end of the harvest year in the fall, they had the Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement. And that's what Adventist theology is tied to. And the reason it's tied to this and not to the architecture necessarily is because we have no reason to think that the architecture in heaven is exactly like the one on earth, because the one on earth was specifically geared towards the needs of the human priest. So basically, the explanation in the Old Testament is that the most holy place, it had the Shekinah glory there, which was the presence of God, and it was an extremely holy place, and none of the priests were allowed to go in there, and even the high priest could only go in there once a year, and he had to be very careful how he went in there, because he could be struck down in the presence of God because he was a sinful man. So this whole process was put in place for the sake of sinful humanity. It didn't need to be replicated, or it couldn't have been replicated exactly the way things are in heaven, which is the way Hebrews talks about this tabernacle being in heaven, because people are sinful and they cannot come into the presence of God. So there was this curtain separating the holy place from the most holy place, protecting the priests as they ministered there from being directly in God's presence. Now, the New Testament tells us that when Jesus died on the cross, that curtain was split in half, and essentially the separation between the holy and the most holy place was taken away, so that the priests could see into that room they were not supposed to be able to see into. So now that Jesus is our high priest and he's in heaven, he doesn't need some kind of separation, some kind of curtain separating him from the Father. So there's no need to assume that the architecture on earth was an exact copy of the architecture of the temple in heaven once Jesus began his ministry there, because there's differences in the needs of the priest, the human priests on earth, and the needs of Christ as a high priest in heaven. So because of this, Adventist theology is not tied to this, and it doesn't really matter if that passage in Hebrews is saying that Jesus went into the holy place, the most holy place, the holy places, or any way different exegetes might insist that that text needs to be interpreted or translated. It doesn't affect our theology. What we're focused on is this yearly cycle that the priests followed in their religious calendar, where they had a Day of Atonement, and that's when the cleansing of the sanctuary happened. So this is another argument that people have stumbled over, that doesn't really affect our theology in any way, and it doesn't really change anything.